a lot of stuff going on today. And then I always tell people, if you think I'm too long, go change the settings on the YouTube video and speed it up to like 1.5 or 1.75, because I try to talk a little bit deliberately, because I was a trial lawyer and the court reporters used to yell at me, "You're talking too fast. I can't keep up with you. I can't keep up." So I've kind of slowed down a little bit. And I try to, and part of it too is, my wife would laugh at this, but I actually do self censor a lot. So I don't always say exactly what's on my mind. I'm thinking about, okay, now while I'm talking, how can I present this better? So last year, about a year ago, I did a conference in Calgary. Pam and I decided to drive. Um, and it's probably the most time we spent together. We ended up driving up all the way through Michigan to Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, around Lake Superior to Thunder Bay, then all the way to Medicine Hat, Alberta, down to Glacier National Park, up to Calgary for a week. And then after Calgary, we went to Banff and Jasper and drove all the way to Vancouver, came down Seattle to Portland. She didn't want to go into Seattle or Portland. I don't know why. But we did the falls and stuff up Columbia River to Coeur d'Alene, 6,700 miles before we got home. Probably the most time we spent together in all the years we've been married. He mentioned earlier we've been married, just had our 49th anniversary. I told Pam, in the Jewish mindset, that we're in the Jubilee year. So everything has to be forgiven. So I'm going to have a lot of fun this year, and we'll see how she applies it. So when I spoke in Canada last year, I was told by the organizers, Last Days Bible Conference, if you want to get that on YouTube. I think I spoke 4 or 5 times that weekend. The person who organized said they get 45 minutes. So I got up there, so I got up and I said, Pam and I on our way here to Calgary, we just spent over 2,000 miles on the Trans-Canada Highway. And I can tell you that we still identify with the sex that we were assigned at birth. And I said, ever since I've been in this country, I've been doing conversions, kilometers to miles, liters to gallons, Canadian dollars to US dollars. And I was told I had 45 minutes, but I haven't been able to figure out what the conversion is from Canadian minutes to US minutes, but I'm pretty sure I get more time. So today, so I'm just going to go through a few things today. As Craig Bong, who was, I don't know if he's still here, but there you are. I thought you'd be you said you were Baptist. I was looking for you in the back. He was raised Baptist. So he was mentioning his Red Alert app, and I don't know which one he has. I have one. I woke up, there's like 80 notifications this morning when I woke up. It's buzzing all the time. There's a lot of things going on. So I'm sort of going to try to compress it because I know you have other things to do with your life, but there's a lot going on. I sometimes try to do a midweek update, but I like to do graphics, make sure that it's good. For example, I'm always looking for a good graphic. So if you have ideas, send them to me. So this is one that I worked on, the checkerboard, the Middle East chessboard. And I only got one piece on there so far that's a dragon rook or whatever. I don't know where I found it. Some art thing online. Thought it was pretty good. So I'm working on that. This is my grid that I use. Acceleration, ACLU. Acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. Acceleration, as we get closer to the end, everything is going to be happening more and more quickly. It's going to be happening at the same time. That's the convergence. And so my view is that all these different lines of Bible prophecy kind of converge at the second coming of Jesus. But it's going to be like a vortex and a tornado. As these lines get closer and closer together, it's going to be a lot of turbulence. And I think we're already seeing that in the world. I will tell you the last 24 hours have just been, last week and the last 24 hours and the last 4 or 5 hours have been what I would call chaotic. and hard to understand. So, and then logistics. So when we have different people, there are different views on, for example, Babylon. What is the final Babylon? Is it a system? Is it a city? Some people say it's Rome. Some people say it's New York. Some people say it's Babylon in Iraq. And whatever it is, it's going to take some time for it to come together. Now, the first Babel wasn't finished when God intervened, so I don't think the final Babylon will be finished constructing. But it will certainly be very influential. So I have different buckets. So I have a Babylon Iraq bucket, I have a New York bucket. And so as I find evidence to support one, I kind of stick it in those buckets, and then, I'll pick the bucket. When we're sure what it is, then I'll pick that bucket up. But like Babylon and Iraq, I understand why people have that view, but I'm not sure that that's the way it works out. And if it does, there's nothing there right now. There's talk about building some homes, and there's some fiber optic stuff, and there's a port several hundred miles away. But I always use the example of Dubai. Dubai doesn't rule over the kings of the earth, and they've been working at building Dubai for 35, 40 years, and that's what it looked like. And then you see things like Mecca, where they built, I think it's the third tallest building on the planet right now, the Royal Clock Tower that overlooks the Kaaba and the Grand Mosque there in Mecca. And if I don't remember to do it later, right now is the pilgrimage to Mecca. As of this morning, I believe that 1,200 pilgrims had died from the heat. And if you go to the Saudi press, you will not find anything mentioned about it. I kind of think that maybe Mohammed bin Salman controls the press. But my understanding, it's causing some tensions. There's like 300 Jordanians, 400 Egyptians have died in the heat. And then people can't find other people because there's so many people there, and the cell phone service doesn't work. And they're desperately trying to find a mother or father or somebody that hasn't showed up where they're supposed to be. And this happens all the time. It was a few years ago. I think there was 4,000 or 5,000 killed in the stampede, crushing the stampede. So not a good advertisement for the religion of peace, in my view. But they'll go. They go every year, and this happens. It just shows the insanity of when people get lost. And this is another graphic somebody sent me. And I've been trying to figure out how to depict it, because I believe that the way End Times Bible prophecy works, it's like a giant symphony score in 3D. So, you have the trombones and the trumpets and everything, and then you have the piano and the violins and everything. And so when you look at a score, but you put it out into 3D, it kind of gives you an idea that this whole thing of the end times it's really wonderful and exciting to watch. It's troubling to watch too, but I'm always trying to figure out how to put that together. For example, this is my view of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I worked a long time on this to try to depict it, because some have the view that the first horseman rides and does everything, then the second horseman comes and does everything, then the third horseman does. But I just don't see how that works. I think the first horseman, they kind of come, maybe they come sort of simultaneously, and the effect of what they do will increase over time till the Lord returns. Although I would say maybe the first horseman, depending if is that the Antichrist or not. If he's the Antichrist, then I would say I have he should be like in the middle of the 70th week is when he should peak, not all the way at the end. So maybe I kind of have that a little bit, but it was very hard for me to kind of conceptualize this. I was a trial lawyer, and we try to, how do we present things so people can understand it? And I had a very complicated financial white collar case, and we spent months trying to figure out how do we inform the jury so they can understand what these transactions were, how they worked, who got paid, why, how people made money. And we worked hard. And to be honest with you, the jury decided, it was sort of like the Trump jury just said, hey, we're not buying anything you say, we're going to find them guilty. And it didn't take very long, even after all that work. But it's very difficult to, I think, conceptualize a lot of these ideas. And then my view of the seals is that the first seal opens and the roll unfolds a little bit because there's a description. The seal opens, then we see this. The second seal opens, then we see this. So the first seal opens and part of the scroll will open, and the second seal, and eventually it will be fulfilled. Now, some people hold the view that all the seals had to be opened before you know what's in the scroll, and I just don't see that in Scripture. And so I think it changes a little bit the way you look at things if you do that. So, and again, this is sort of the operative verse that I go to a lot, Daniel chapter 12. Daniel gets these visions, and he wants to know, when is this going to happen? If I got those visions, I would want to know. And he said, Daniel, when shall be the end of these things? And he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white, and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So my view is that we should want to be the wise guys that understand what's happening. And so we need to be paying attention to Scripture and what's happening. So I get accused sometimes of newspaper exegesis. But my point is, okay, fine. But those scriptures that are given to us are going to unfold in a real world with real people, real geopolitics, real countries, and that type of thing, and real wars. So why wouldn't we pay attention, especially since the rebirth of Israel in 1948? That was sort of a seminal event to me. So I'm going to, let's see. As I said, I have a lot of things, and there's some things I didn't get to last week, and I wanted to kind of clear them up a little bit. So there was a paper that was published. I did talk about this a little bit, called Situational Awareness, a Decade Ahead, about artificial intelligence. It's written by an AI insider, and the Lord blesses me with people that are involved in different industries. So I have some AI insiders, people that work in the industry, that communicate with me privately on secure channels because they don't want people to know that they're communicating with me about these things. One thing I've learned in AI is that the people that are involved in it say, whatever you see is on the surface, we're way further down the road than you think. I'm not sure that AI is the exact thing that we should be looking at. The guys I did the Prophecy Roundtable, we have a messenger group, a text group, and we text things back and forth. Patrick Wood, Scott Townsend, Tom Hughes, Britt Gillette, I think Brandon Holthouse is in that group also. And we kind of just exchange information, and we look at this, and Patrick Wood looked at this guy's paper. It's about 180 pages long, and he said, well, he's a young guy, and he doesn't understand technocracy. And Patrick understands technocracy. I've known Patrick for a very long time. And he was talking about this 20 years ago or more. He was writing about it. And now it's actually coming to fruition. And until about a year ago, I think Patrick thought that the final fulfillment of how this is all going to come together was a ways off. Now he says, we're here. And he makes a very good point, so that there's this beast system coming. There'll be some kind of technological system that's going to be able to control how people buy or sell. Patrick made a brilliant point on Tom Hughes last year. He said, listen, when that system is going to be implemented by the false prophet and antichrist to control everybody, it's not like and it comes after the abomination of desolation. And Patrick's point was, it's not going to be like, okay, we do the abomination of desolation. The Antichrist goes into the temple or the holy place and declares himself above all that is called God. That's 2 Thessalonians 3. It's not like after that happens, the Antichrist and false prophets sit down and say, it would be a really good idea for us to have some kind of system to control everybody and how they buy or sell. Maybe we could crowdfund technological development of that. Patrick's point is, no, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be ready to go, and they're going to say, okay, now flip those switches, and everything will be ready. And I think he's absolutely spot on that. So this guy says, look at and this is just a chart of some of the systems on various capabilities relative to human performance. And what do you see in the trend with these chat bots, chat GPT and whatever? The change in like a year was from a stupid middle schooler to the most advanced college graduate PhD level in like a year. When I was in Jerusalem in December 2022, and I know some of you have heard this before, but I think it's very important. A guy named Jonathan Medved spoke to us. The Israeli government puts on a Christian media summit. I was able to get invited to it. And it was very interesting, but they had this guy, he's an entrepreneur, which means he wears like golf shoes all the time and doesn't wear a tie. And man, the guy's my hero just for that. I was on a panel on Fox News on Martha McCallum and Brett Baer when the Ohio election took place in fall of 2022. And I wore my went to the driving range. And so I went down to the thing and was on a special plan. I got to sit on the front row. I had my golf socks on and long pants. And so when I sat down, you could see my ankles. And my wife's texting me, "You're embarrassing me. Why are you wearing your golf shoes on national television with short socks? I can't believe you did that." I said, listen, any guy who sees me sitting there is thinking, look at that guy, he's in control of his life. Am I right? Amen? Did I get an amen on that? So, and she didn't buy it either. So Jonathan Medved, he's talking. We're in Jerusalem, sitting on Mount Scopus, which is really part of the Mount of Olives ridge. And he says, have you heard about ChatGPT? It had just come out a week before. It's got like fastest to 1 million downloads of anything anybody's ever any app anybody's put out. He said, this stuff is amazing. Are you watching artificial intelligence? We in the tech community, entrepreneurs, we're excited about technology. It's going to be fantastic what they can do. And then he says, I have the video, we will make the lame walk. Now, I got chills. I'm sitting in Jerusalem. And this is around where Jesus was when John the Baptist sent his disciples to Jesus and said, Jesus, are you the one? Are you the Messiah? Are you the Mashiach? Or should we look for another one? And Jesus said, you go tell John what you see. The lame walk, the blind see, the deaf hear. And when you looked at what Elon Musk was saying about the development of Neuralink, when they did the presentation, it was in exactly that order. Lame walk, blind see, deaf hear. We were doing it technologically. And so what you see is you sort of see this messianic quality to this technology and the control that it gives and the knowledge and information and that type of thing. This is the way I and some others see it. And this has never happened before. Okay, this is Microsoft country, right? So can I say something negative about Microsoft? Do you remember when they came out with Office and they had that stupid Clippy, that paperclip person that used to run around your program, and the first thing you did was you figured out how to shut that idiot off, remember? Okay, so we're way beyond Clippy now. And it shows how much I know. Bill Gates is one of the richest guys in the world, and he left a long time ago, and so is Steve Ballmer, and well, Alan was till he passed away. But so we live at this time of incredible change, exponential change. So all the graphs that we see on computer technology development are like this. NVIDIA came out with some chips. It's now that all of a sudden it's the most valuable company on the planet. It's worth almost $4 trillion. It's worth more than Microsoft and Apple. And those three companies are worth more than almost all the other countries in the world, except for the United States, in terms of, if you compare net worth capitalization to GDP, they've got all the countries except China and the United States. I mean, NVIDIA is right about where Germany and Japan are. How does that happen? So Jason Wang, when he's doing a thing on NVIDIA, he says, look at what we've developed. We have this chip. And he holds up this thing. It's about the size of an iPad. And he goes, we figured out how to connect these things in a better way. And we're going to even do better when we get the technology to transform the chip interrelationship better. This chip, though, has at least 250 billion transistors on each chip. How do you even process that? You understand, that's like 30 transistors for every person on the planet on each chip of all the ones that they manufacture. And so it's a problem. And so one of the problems they have is power grid. This is in Washington Post the other day. They don't know how they're going to power all the farms. So they're trying to think, how do we do this? Microsoft is trying to train the ChatGPT type products to evaluate nuclear regulations so they can cut corners and get small nuclear plants built next to their server farms. Now they're talking about fusion, which has sort of been a big, how are we going to do that? If we could do fusion, we would solve all the energy problems of the world. So they're trying to unlock that so they can develop the technology even more quickly than they already have so far. And so NVIDIA says, well, our chips are, let's see, so in a 10-year period, and I forget where we are in the 10-year period, the chip speeds and processing power is going to go up 1,000 times. And then in the 3 years after that period ends, we're going to go up another 1,000 times, which means from this period, 1,000 times, and this period, 1,000 times. That means they're 1,000,000 times more efficient, faster than they were. The problem is the people that are in control of this don't necessarily have our best interests at heart. So here's Jeffrey Hinton. He's one of the godfathers of artificial intelligence. And this is a little bit of what he said. I'm just going to play about a minute of this. He's interviewed, and he's scared. He quit. He quit Google. He's in his 70s, and he said, I'm out of here. This is going way too fast. Here's what he said.
In the spring of 2023, last year, I began to realize that these digital intelligences we're building might just be a lot better form of intelligence than us. And we had to take seriously the idea they were going to get smarter than us, and maybe within the next 20 years or so. And so we needed now to think seriously about, could we control them? Before that, I thought it would be much longer, so we didn't need to worry about it right now. And many people still think they're just statistical tricks and they don't really understand what they're saying. I think that's quite wrong. So I came out and focused on the existential threat, that is, the idea that they'll take over from people. Because many people were saying it was science fiction, and I no longer believe it's science fiction.
You alluded to it earlier, but just remind us how quickly this technology is moving, in your opinion.
It's moving very fast. The best way to understand how fast it's moving is to look at what it was like 10 years ago. 10 years ago, if you told people that today we would have a language understanding system where you could ask it anything at all, and it would give you an answer about as good as a not very good expert, people would have said, no, we're not going to get that in 10 years. That's crazy. People have been working on natural language processing for 50 years, and this would be a huge advance. Well, we're there. So what we're going to get in 10 years' time is plausibly that difference again, and that's going to be superintelligence. So my guess is there's a 50-50 chance that we'll get it within the next 20 years. Almost every decent researcher I know believes that in the long run it'll get more intelligent than us. It's not.
So, and that's kind of frightening, because there are people who they only care about developing it. So when this started, it was just a little over a year ago, there were all these articles, oh, existential threat, the end of humanity, and all this other stuff, which sort of sounds apocalyptic and revelation-y and all that other stuff. People say, oh, it's not going to go that fast. But then all these people coming out and said, it really is going to go that fast. Some people even came out and said it's like demons are involved. We can't explain it. Ray Kurzweil came out. So the thinking was, we'll get to this super intelligence in, like he said, 10 or 20 years. Ray Kurzweil came out and said, next year you're going to be really far advanced. And he used to say, there was a very famous time cover that said 2045, the year man becomes immortal. That was Ray Kurzweil's ideas. That was 10, 12 years ago. Now he was saying, well, it's going to be 2030, 2035. And I just saw an article where he said it's going to be like 2028. And what does that mean? Eliezer Yudkowsky, who's involved in this, he would look like the people down at Comic-Con, kind of geeky, but very, very intelligent. And he said, we can't let it go on. If people want to agree to slow down, we need to go bomb their server farms. And he's an insider. So I'm just telling you so this is one of the convergence things. And what are they going to do with it? This was in yesterday's Wall Street Journal. How a chatbot helped me talk to my dead mother. Now, couple that with all these programs, or all these laws that are coming into place that help people with medically assisted, MAID, medical assistance in dying. They have a law in Canada. They're talking about it here in the United States. And my understanding, I don't know if it was Canada, Netherlands, or one of the Scandinavian countries, they're offing thousands of people a year. What impact does that have on society? What's the social cost? Now they'll say, well, they were, getting in bad health and they're going to cost a lot. But maybe they contributed. I think everybody contributes something to society. But what are you going to do when they can't? So Yuval Harari, back in 2017 at the World Economic Forum, first time I heard him, I've since researched him. I could do hours on Yuval Harari. He's a Jewish, lives in Tel Aviv with his boyfriend or his boy partner. They have kids. I think his father was a liberal rabbi in a Jewish Judaism. And he said at the World Economic Forum, he says, look, especially by the way, his medieval history, and he said, in the Middle Ages, in the Dark Ages, we kept people around because we always knew that they would provide something of value for the Lord of the Manor. They would clean the manure out of the barn, they would plant the crops, they would harvest the crops, they would clean the Lord's clothes and that type of thing. He says, but now we'll have half of humanity that won't have anything to add. What do we do with them? Then couple that with the need for more power, and the question is, what are they going to do? They need power for their servers and their technology. You're just kind of a useless consumer of everything. And then it really starts to sound like Revelation in the end times. And it's not off in the future, it is today. In 2015, Yuval Harari went to Google talks at Google headquarters in Silicon Valley. And he said this, if you see me, I've played the clip many times. I love coming to Silicon Valley. I get to see my friend, but I like being here because it is here that the religions that will control humanity in the 21st century are being created. So you need to understand, while they claim to be atheists and against Christian religion and values and that sort of thing, and Jesus and God, it's a religion thing. Ray Kurzweil, will man become immortal? He really means it. And when you start hearing that, we shall become, well, what Harari says is we don't believe in a God above the clouds, but we believe in a God in the clouds of information. Listen, I know the Lord's, I really don't worry about it. I'm just trying to tell you what is going on, so you're informed and you can make choices. It's going to get very difficult. So Japan right now, I think I'm one of the fewer guys who talk about demographics, because one of the things that's happening right now is, what if we're running out of everything, including people at the same time? What are people going to do to try to right the ship? So Japan, or China's in dramatic decline population-wise. I think they lost over 1 million people in population last year. Japan's even worse. For years, they've been selling more adult diapers in Japan than baby diapers, because nobody's having babies. So they've actually tried to fix it, like by saying, sorry, ladies, you can't get sterilized. You can't get your tubes tied unless there's a medical reason for it. And so here's an article from today's New York Times. In Japan, 5 women sue for the right to ensure they won't become mothers. All right. When I see that, this just like the last 2 days, I'm seeing all this stuff and I'm sort of thinking, like, if I wasn't an end times guy, I would be. If I wasn't an end times guy on Thursday, I would be this morning. If I understood what the scripture said, because of the acceleration, convergence, and that type of thing, and the logistics are all coming together very quickly. Well, this is the last thing I have on artificial intelligence. And we live at this time where there's this massive control thing going on with government. The United States government, like, we used to have a First Amendment. I studied about it in law school. It's still there, but nobody really cares about it. And so they're trying to control information. So this is Biden Department of Homeland Security docs suggested that Trump supporters, comes from like John Brennan, former CIA, James Clapper, former CIA director. Like, if you're a Trump supporter, military, religious people, you are likely a violent terror threat. And so you live in a place where surveillance and control are going to become very, very important to the people in charge. And that sounds very much like the Antichrist, false prophet, and the system that they want to put in place. So again, they'll have that system ready to go, and they'll just flip the switch. And so, look, in the prophecy community, we disagree with everybody else on not on everything, but a significant number of things as to how this is going to work out. And I'm okay with that. I'm very comfortable with that. But I did say this to somebody, I think, Carlo, yesterday. We need to be a little bit humble about our positions sometimes, because who called the Charlie Vector 019er thing? Who called artificial intelligence? We had ideas as to how it would happen, but it came on like a freight train very quickly. I went to Scotland last year. There were cameras everywhere. I mean, I'm talking like up in the Highlands by the Cairngorms National Park and Balmoral Castle. There's everything on the highway is monitored. And they do like an average speed thing. I couldn't figure it out. I figured I was probably going to get a ticket charged with my rental car. I didn't though. But you'd see people driving by at 90 and a 70, and then they'd be going 50 and a 70 because it was the average that they weren't making it from one place to another too quickly. And that's kind of interesting too when they talk about 15-minute cities and control. It's really, really out of control. So this is, I forgot I had these in here about the Hajj. Happens every year. Every Muslim is supposed to do this. I think it's very difficult at this point to deny or claim that Islam does not have some major factor in the end times. And we're on the verge of a massive war in the Middle East. And if you're at first hour, it may be even worse. So they have a couple, 3 million people. They're trying to build the great mosque here in Mecca underneath that clock tower. They're expanding the mosque. If you look at this 100 years ago, that mosque area could accommodate 10,000 people. By the time the Saudi royal family is done, they hope to accommodate 5 million people at one time. So process that. The religion of peace. These are just some of the tents that they've built. They're permanent tents that are there outside of Mecca for pilgrims to stay at. That's pretty amazing. You kind of see the clock tower in the upper left-hand corner, the third tallest building. It's insane. Oh, so here we go. This is the guy who prosecuted Trump. Well, he refused to prosecute Trump. The Department of Justice sent somebody down to D.C. or to New York to become part of the New York prosecutor office, the Manhattan County District Attorney, to prosecute Trump. And then Biden says, what? It just amazes to me how openly people in our government lie to us. We didn't have anything to do with it. They just decided on their own. It was your guy that you sent down there. Come on. He was born at night, but not last night. So here's a protest in New York. I think this is in New York about Hamas. So Bragg says, all these people in Colombia, we're not going to charge them. Oh, but former president, political opponent, you made the wrong entry, we think, on something that's outside the statute of limitations anyway, so we're going to charge you with 34 felonies. Now, look, I don't care whether you like Trump or not. That's not the issue. The issue is, if they come after him, they're coming after you too. And I was a lawyer. I had a client caught up in a big major federal investigation. And at one point in that investigation, somebody in the prosecutor's office, a lot of these guys that you see on MSNBC, they decided, hey, we don't want Howler representing this guy, so let's make it difficult for him. So I got subpoenaed to an FBI interview. I'll be honest with you, it's intimidating. Especially my wife was really worried about it. Because if you make a mistake, remember Martha Stewart? She never committed a crime. They said she lied in her FBI interview. And they'll do stuff as like, I had this massive cases that I worked on for this client. And what they would do is they would ask me questions. Well, did you ever communicate with so-and-so about this? But they never show you all the thousands of emails that you wrote. It's a memory test. So you had to be very careful. You said, well, may have, but the record, the emails will speak for themselves. So I don't want to say anything that would be inconsistent with the emails, the paper record. But if you don't do that, you can go to jail for a long time. And that messes up your life, even if you're charged. So here's an example of what's happening right now. Transgender surgeries. Christopher Rufo had a whistleblower at Children's Hospital in Houston last year, a doctor. They were very, very careful. They worked with lawyers and consultants. Don't disclose any private medical information about patients. Just talk in broad general concepts, which they did. What happened? That doctor's now been charged with a number of felonies for violating the HIPAA laws, the privacy laws. I saw a video the other day from a Ring door camera of FBI agents showing up at a nurse's house, saying, "Hey y'all, how you doing? We just want to ask you some questions. Can we come in and sit down?" And she said, "No," which is what you should do too. That's a practical advice. No charge for that. I'll talk to you when I have my lawyer. Now, your lawyer can sit with you in an FBI interview. What they did with me was they submitted me to 3 grand juries where you don't get a lawyer. You're in the room, prosecutors, whole team of prosecutors, and the grand jurors, and nobody's sitting there looking at you sideways if you're talking too much. I mean, it's very intimidating. And just understand that they're going to do this a lot. The election might change things, it might not. I don't know. I know if one party wins and continues on what they're doing, we're in for a very rough time. Particularly for Christians, conservative, and you oppose this agenda of the alphabet mafia or the Israel-Palestinian thing. So here's a Twitter and some video of a Palestinian Hamas protest. So here's what the guy says in his Twitter account. He says, I can blow this up. Well, we see it in New York City Free Palestine protest, the Hezbollah flag and an inverted triangle, which is a symbol historically associated with Nazi concentration camps and now used on October 7th. And in Hamas propaganda videos, a portrait of Hamas leader Sinwar and masked people. So here's a little bit of what you see going on. And by the way, I apologize if there's bad words in there. I didn't listen to it. Do you understand? This man is a monster. And young people are in New York praising him. Everybody should be like him. It's over. I don't know how else to say this. It's how you got to stand up against this, but they're mobs. They're coming after you, I think. You're about this 12 or 13-year-old young girl raped in Paris by a Muslim immigrant. Oh, well, that's just a one. It happens all the time. There are places in Sweden, particularly in Malmo, where you cannot go as a non-Muslim person. It is not safe. I've had Swedish people tell me this. Is that covered on MSNBC or CBS or CNN? No, they don't. They hide it. Okay, so let's talk about Israel. And we'll go through this because this could go on very long. Netanyahu earlier this week dissolved his war cabinet. These were people who were brought into the coalition government so that Israel would be united. Gantz withdrew. Eisenkot, who was a military guy, not an elected Knesset member, he withdrew. And everything's falling apart. Netanyahu still has a solid coalition. And about 85-90% of the people in Israel support what he wants to do to beat Hamas. But you don't hear that. You only hear about the crazy people. And now Netanyahu is upset with the U.S. government. Like, we need weapons to fight these guys, and you're slow walking us. So this is what he said on Tuesday, I think it was.
When Secretary Blinken was recently here in Israel, we had a candid conversation. I said I deeply appreciated the support the U.S. has given Israel from the beginning of the war. But I also said something else. I said it's inconceivable that in the past few months, the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel. Israel, America's closest ally, fighting for its life, fighting against Iran and our other common enemies. Secretary Blinken assured me that the administration is working day and night to remove these bottlenecks. I certainly hope that's the case. It should be the case. During World War II, Churchill told the United States, give us the tools, we'll do the job. And I said, give us the tools and we'll finish the job a lot faster.
So they asked Karine John Layar, or Pierre, I call her Liar, Karine John Liar, what do you think of that? And she goes, we don't know what he's talking about. We're giving him everything that he wants. Oh, really? Trying to get F-15s out of you for like 10 years and now you're slow walking it. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Boy, so there's a soul who desperately needs Jesus. I mean, can you imagine if she got cleaned up and saved and how wonderful that would be? But there's something to Netanyahu's conclusion. For example, this is from the Financial Times yesterday. U.S. places Ukraine at front of defense queue for key Patriot missile systems. Israel is facing more rockets than any other country on the planet. And I've talked to a lot of people from Alma Research and people in Israel. The interviews are on our YouTube channel. Avraham Levine from Alma Research up in the north. He lives 1 mile from the Golan border. He lives in the Golan 1 mile from the Syrian border. 8 kids, 45, served in Gaza in the IDF reserve. His son's in the IDF reserve down in Gaza. And he said it's incredibly difficult. You clean an area and you leave, and 2 minutes later they're jumping up out of tunnels from underneath what you just cleared, shooting RPGs and machine guns and that type of thing at you, AK-47s. It's almost an impossible situation. Can't flood the tunnels. You got hostages. I'm telling you what, Israel's in a very, 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 very sticky, I've left out add one more very to that, sticky position. This is tough. And that's Gaza. Look, they're going to prevail in Gaza. But our administration is like, well, what are you going to do the day after? Well, I'll tell you what, we'll tell you that when we get there. There was some talk about, well, we're going to put Palestinian clans in charge. Because the Palestinian Arab society is very tribal. So clans are very important. So like Mahmoud Abbas is from up around Nazareth. People in Hebron, they hate him more than they hate any Jew. So there's very divisive. So we're going to get the clans in charge of their areas. So what did they do in Gaza? They started killing the heads of the clans. So Israel will prevail to some extent, but then the question is, what are you going to do afterwards? Now, I've got a video here, and I do not remember what it is, but let's play it and see what happens.
At the start of its devastating offensive on the Gaza Strip, Israel set an ambitious goal, destroying Hamas. On Wednesday, the Israeli army spokesperson publicly expressed doubts this was even possible.
Hamas is an ideology. Hamas is rooted in the hearts of the people of Gaza. To eliminate it, to replace those who run the public services, those who distribute food or steal it, there must be an alternative that can emerge. It's a decision that has to be taken politically, and the army will implement it. Until it is, Hamas will continue to exist. Hamas will not disappear from Gaza. It will not disappear.
The statement caused confusion and prompted Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet to react immediately. It pointed out that the destruction of Hamas's military and governmental capabilities has been defined as one of the main objectives of the war. Responding to Netanyahu, the army released another statement clarifying what their spokesperson meant.
In his words, the IDF spokesperson referred to the destruction of Hamas as an idea, and he said it in a clear and explicit manner. Any other claim is taking things out of context.
While the United States is trying to mediate a truce in Gaza, Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly stated that he'll continue the war until the militant group is eliminated. But the government itself appears divided on the question of Gaza's future after the war. While the defense minister favors governance of the enclave by Palestinian entities, the national security minister Ben Gvir wants it to be annexed by Israel.
So at Ben Gvir, a lot of people don't like Ben Gvir in Israel. I actually went to Shabbat dinner with his interpreter. He speaks some English, but he uses an interpreter from Hebrew to English. So I know the people are very, very close to him. And I've asked this question. Okay, we don't like him, but his idea is we go resettle Gaza with Jews. By the way, the friends I have, they were kicked out of Gaza in 2005. They lived there. And how's it worked out with Hamas and the Palestinian Arabs in charge of Gaza? Hasn't gone that well, has it? So Ben Gvir says, let them go to Egypt. Let them go to Jordan. We'll resettle it, and I think it'll be okay. And I know people don't like that. But the point is he wrong? Is that the worst idea in the world? And remember, go back to biblical times. They were told to eradicate these people. And all the areas where they did not are the problems today. And I've been to those places. I've stood where Joshua stood. I've stood where Joshua erected a stone. And people didn't finish the job at the time of the conquest. And how's it gone? We're talking 3,500 years of problems. And so when somebody says so I don't know the answer, okay? I'm just telling you that I'm the attorney. Actually, Ben Gvir's an attorney also. And I'm like, so I've got to make the case that he's wrong. You would have to pay me a lot of money to make that case, because it would take a lot of thinking, a lot of research, and I don't think you can do it. Excuse me one second. I have an app open that. Where is it? Down. There it is. There's an app that everybody in Israel uses called WhatsApp, and I haven't figured out how to turn the dinger
At the start
off.
of its
So they've taken out guys as a commander that they eliminated the other day. And Israel, they're not indiscriminate bombing to get these guys. Look at this. This is a video of what happened. This is the guy they took out. Okay. I mean, you don't even need to clean the hot tub. I'm sorry, I don't know how else to say it. You understand how precise that was. And I know that sounds cold and cruel, but this guy was a monster. And I know, listen, it's war. And war is war. Okay.
Today, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu repeated criticism the Biden administration calls untrue and unfair, that the U.S. has withheld weapons Israel needs to fight the war in Gaza. The diplomatic spat between the Prime Minister and the Biden White House comes as simmering tensions between Netanyahu and his own military boiled over. Nick Schifrin is here with more.
Now, this is PBS.
For months, even years, military officials in Israel have often disagreed with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But most military criticism of Israel's longest-serving leader is made anonymously or after retirement. This week, though, Israel's Defense Forces top spokesman made public the military's concerns about Netanyahu's repeated claim of total victory over Hamas.
The political echelon has to decide, and the Israel defense.
We already heard. So he says Hamas can't be defeated, and then the IDF comes out and says, no, he meant the ideology. We'll take care of the people. What you're seeing in real time is a White House operation of the Biden administration, and I use the term Biden very specifically with full knowledge as to what you might think about that. Yes. As to who might be in charge of all of this. It's clear. I mean, you think Biden's doing this? It's the Blinken, it's all the people who are in the Obama administrations that are back. They never go away. I mean, go look at the old video of the Oslo Accord signing on the White House lawn, September 13th, 1993. 30 years ago. I happened to be in D.C. that day. I went and met with my Jewish friend from high school who was a Democratic, uber liberal Democratic congressman. He went to Harvard, but a good friend. Well, he was all excited about it. Go look at the video of it. It's the same people that are running around. Now, a few of them have died. You know, a few of them are older, like Clinton, Hillary, and Bill. But that's all the same State Department people that were around then. They're just recycling them, Republican and Democrat. Oh, I know what this is. It's that bad in Israel that Netanyahu is getting death threats. So this is today's Israel Hayom newspaper. And they're complaining that too many people are spending time trying to protect Netanyahu's life. Because our government and a lot of people in Israel would say, if he's gone, everything is better. Now, I will see, how's the nice way to say this? If you believe that, you're perhaps one of the, what's that comedy? Here's your sign. Okay, you're really foolish if you believe that. So we have these people running around the Middle East. Amos Hochstein, Barbara Leaf, she's an assistant, she's the Mideast coordinator for the State Department. Anthony Blinken, all running around. We're going to make peace. We're going to bring peace to this. So Barbara Leaf goes to the Senate this week for a hearing, and Ted Cruz had a few questions. This is the entertaining part of today's prophecy update.
Ambassador Leaf, you are the administration's point person on the Middle East. How's that working out?
I love my job, Senator.
Have things in the Middle East gotten better or worse since Joe Biden became president?
We have had a series of black swan events, so no doubt the region is in a very difficult state.
Is your answer things have gotten worse?
My answer is that a series of black swan events have crowded on
Have they gotten better? You're not suggesting things have gotten better,
No,
are you?
I have not.
In fact, they've gotten a lot worse.
That's the nature of black swan.
So it's black swans. You guys had nothing to do with it. It's not mistakes you made. It's just something that happened externally.
Well, I think an assessment of the events of October 7th is still to be done. I can't speak to that.
Okay, so did y'all make any mistakes that led to it?
I'm not sure.
All right, here's one. How about giving hundreds of millions of dollars to the Gaza Strip, much of which ended up in the hands of Hamas? Was that a mistake now that we saw what happened on October 7th?
I'm going to defer to my colleague from USAID. I'm not aware of hundreds of millions of dollars going to Hamas from U.S. coffers.
All right, how about $100 billion to Iran? Was that a mistake?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, Senator.
Well, you tell me, how much money has this administration flowed to Iran?
We have not flowed money to Iran.
Really?
We have money in accounts that are restricted for humanitarian use only.
And money's not fungible?
This regime will always spend money on these kinds of activities, the proxy activities.
When Joe Biden became president, how much was Iran selling in oil a day?
I don't have that figure for you, Senator.
Of course you don't. The answer is about 300,000 barrels a day. How much is Iran selling in oil a day now?
Somewhere short of 2 million.
So it went from 300,000 barrels a day to 2 million barrels a day. That's about $80 billion that the Ayatollah has made because your administration refuses to enforce oil sanctions.
No, we do enforce oil sanctions.
Well, you do so terribly because the number has increased almost tenfold.
But because of the strictures that we put on, the sanctions that we put on, the targeting that we've done, 230 alone directed towards those who traffic in Iranian oil, that has imposed a heavy cost on Iran, and we estimate that
Wait. You're saying it's a heavy cost.
Mm-hmm.
They went from 300,000 barrels a day to 2 million barrels a day. Where's the heavy cost? That's an extra 1.7 million barrels a day. That's $80 billion. True or false, 90% of Hamas's funding comes from Iran?
No, not 90%. It is a large, it's
okay, how much is it
amount.
then?
I don't know at this
You're in charge of the damn region and you don't, what do you mean you don't know?
At this exact moment, I can't tell you.
All right, how much of
this
Hezbollah's funding comes from Iran?
Huge amount.
It's about 90%. Both of those are about 90%. Do you think it made the world safer or less safe to take a theocratic lunatic like the Ayatollah who chants death to America and death to Israel and to flow $100 billion? Did that make us more safe or less safe?
The U.S. is not flowing money to Iran, Senator.
So I love politics, and sometimes I wonder, like, how do these people not go across? And I've been in these hearing rooms, so I know the distances. You could slap somebody before they stop you. I mean, it would be very, so I think these people have the patience of Job. So here's the head of the committee, a Democrat, talking about, well, what he thinks about the whole thing.
We will now undergo a round of 5-minute questions. Ambassador Leaf, let me first talk to you about day after planning in Gaza. The FY25 request largely maintains recent funding levels for the West Bank and Gaza, despite the fact that we know we have a huge bill ahead of us. But we can't spend money effectively in Gaza if we don't have a governance structure that keeps Israel safe and understands political realities on the ground in Gaza. My understanding is that Prime Minister Netanyahu has essentially refused to start post-war planning in Gaza, not because he doesn't believe it is important to do so, but because he has pressure from his far-right coalition partners who want to reoccupy Gaza with Jewish settlements. So can you just talk for a moment about the status of planning?
So you see the criticism.
So in the face of this, the Americans are saying, let's get to you.
Okay, so we're going to have the antidote to that nonsense. Carolyn Glick on her program the other day. I think there's a few-minute clip. I want to play a lot of it just because I respect her a lot. I've read her, followed her for years, met her. I pray for her. She looks tired to me. I mean, I've seen her in person, and she has, a couple kids around, 11, 13 boys. She lives in a frat. She sees the bodies coming home from Gaza. So there's like 3 more lines in the cemetery since October 7th. And there haven't been that many killed. That's the interesting thing. So she lives in a frat, which is, in between Hebron and Bethlehem, Jerusalem. And I just personally think this is her time to be there to kind of bring focus to things.
So in the face of this, the Americans are saying, let's get to yes. Let's just make a deal. Here, you capitulate, you give up your control over the northern third of Israel, and, then you can send your people back where Hezbollah will protect them, from the Afghans and the Pakis. I mean, it's insane, right? And that's the American position. But wait, there's more to the American position. I mentioned Barbara Leaf, the Assistant Secretary of State for the Near East. So she puts out this statement, I think today, where she explained what the American vision for a deal is, without the mentioning Mount Dome. So what she says is, here's how we do it. What we do is we have the Lebanese armed forces, the LAF, and UNIFIL, the UN forces that were supposed to be preventing Hezbollah from receding its forces along the border with Israel after the 2006 Israel-Hezbollah war. They're gonna be in charge of the border, and they're gonna make sure that Hezbollah doesn't attack. So there are only 2 problems with this. The LAF is controlled by Hezbollah, and UNIFIL is controlled by Hezbollah. Why are they both controlled by Hezbollah? Because Hezbollah is stronger than both of them are. So they only exist because Hezbollah allows them to live. And every time that the UNIFIL forces, by the way, try to step out of line and mention that maybe it wasn't a good thing that Hezbollah was setting up all these fake nature preserves along the border with Israel where they were carrying out recon on Israel, they got shot at. Either they got killed or their convoys just got shot at. And these were repeated 1 or 2 times. It's like the Sicilian uncle in The Godfather. You show up, you get it, and you change. And you don't say anything about what Hezbollah is doing for the next 10 years. The same thing with LAF. The LAF is Hezbollah's auxiliary force. And the beautiful thing about the LAF is that the United States pays the salaries of its soldiers and officers in cash. That's what U.S. taxpayers are doing, and the United States arms it and trains it. So it funds it. So this is like a U.S. force, the LAF, except it's not. The United States does all the work. They put in all the money. They give all the arms. But then the LAF is loyal to Hezbollah. Why? Because Hezbollah will kill every single soldier in the LAF if they step out of line. And then, they've also been seeding Shiites into the LAF so that they actually have their loyalists in key positions in that force. So the LAF is just an American fiction that American taxpayers fund, that U.S. Special Forces arm, that Congress approves the arming of, right? I mean, Special Forces train and then Congress arms, right? And it's totally controlled by Hezbollah.
So this is a problem. We train these people, and then they work with Hezbollah in what's called the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, biblical heartland of Israel, where not that many people go. It's where the Bible happened. If you ever get a chance, I'm going to try to do a tour sometime. I may do a solidarity tour this year if I can get it arranged. But my goal is to do a tour and not do the circle tour where you circle Judea and Samaria. You actually go in there. It's difficult, but it will. Pam and I have done it. I've done it on my own. It's not easy. And we went with Joel Kramer. By the way, buy his book, Where God Came Down. You will learn more about biblical archaeology. And it's interesting. It's fun. Go watch his channel, Expedition Bible. He puts up these things. He gets like 2 million views on archaeology. When we were with him, we were at Herodian, and this guy walked by, and Joel clutched his chest. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, it was just Pam and I and Joel. He goes, that is the most respected field archaeologist in history. Just walked by. I said, oh, so to you, he's a rock star. Literally. And he goes, yeah, he kind of is. So, but you will learn a lot about the Bible. And it's very important that Christians support Israel. Go on solidarity tours if you can to support these people, learn about what's going on. There's a lot of places to contribute to get things. Because, look, they all of a sudden have 400,000 people in the service. They didn't have winter coats for them. You just don't go down to, well, they don't have Walmart in Israel, but the equivalent of Walmart and buy 400,000 coats, winter coats. They don't exist. They didn't have body armor. So a lot of Christian ministries have been very effective at bringing that stuff to their need. And I will tell you, there are people coming to faith in Jesus, the Messiah, as a result of that. And that ought to be a lesson to us. So my friend Olivier Melnick, he started a ministry called Shalom and Messiah. And he's doing these solidarity things and supporting Israeli troops. Because we've talked, and we always want to shove oh, well, we'll be out of here, and then somebody else is going to have to worry about Matthew 25, caring for these, the least of these, my brethren. That's at the end. And I've had a conversation with Olivia, and our conclusion is no, we ought to be doing it now, especially now. So that's the principle. We ought to apply it now. That's just where we are. So there's an article, you can find it at Punchbowl News, about Netanyahu's interview. And he just says, listen, they're slow walking things. We appreciate the help from the Americans, but we're in a very difficult situation. We have this situation in North, Hezbollah is there. You see articles like this from the BBC. Why 800 people fled a sun-kissed Mediterranean village? What happened? They left their homes on October 8th. Every day since October 8th, Hezbollah has been shooting missiles, rockets, mortars, drones into northern Israel. I don't know what the number is. I've heard different, 60, 80, 100,000 people left their homes and have been living in hotels around Israel. They don't have jobs. Their kids don't have school. And they're saying, wait a minute, How long is this going to, we can't live like this. And I have an interview. So, and they're leaving Lebanon too. This is a picture, this is a little video of the Beirut airport this morning. They don't have any money in Lebanon. They're all leaving because they know war is coming. So Hezbollah, they've got this guy that was killed, his funeral. And so here's Hezbollah articles. Here's Nasrallah. He's coming out saying, we're coming after you. There will be no safe place in Israel. Go back 2 months, I interviewed Avraham Levine, who lives in the Golan. I said, what happens if this cuts loose? So at the time, everybody thought Hezbollah in Lebanon and a little bit in Syria has 150,000 rockets, many of which, thousands of which can be precisely guided, all the way to a lot down on the Red Sea. So I asked Avraham, I said, what happens if that cuts loose? His response to me, as a father of 8, he said, no child anywhere in Israel will go to school for at least a year. Okay, now put that into the context of your own lives with children and grandchildren. What do you do with that? And Zaritza Habi, she says, listen, we can't live like this. This is Arab News. Nowhere in Israel is safe. Here's a little video of Nasrallah that somebody put together, sort of a clip.
إذا فرضت الحرب على لبنان فإن المقاومة ستقاتل بلا ضوابط وبلا قواعد وبلا
No rules. We're going, and then they put up this video. Now some people say, oh look, they know how to use Google Earth. But I think it's much more serious than that, because all this is targeting information. Tankers, farms, water facilities, airports, air bases. They even have, I think, in here, Dimona nuclear reactor, refineries, chemical plants, ports. And they're saying, look, we have the precise coordinates to attack this. We just feed that into the missiles, and boom, there they go. That's, I think, the moment. Whoever thinks of war against us will regret it. So they're loaded for bear. So here's an article in Al Akbar. I read it, kind of a pain to get if you get a title of an article, you can open it in Google Chrome and it'll translate it automatically. That's just sort of a Howler life hack. So there's no charge for that. So here's this article, and look, they have this map with a missile. They're threatening Cyprus. Big article at the Washington Institute. Why are they doing this? Jonathan Spire, my friend at the Jerusalem Post, you ought to get his article, Hijacked on the High Seas. They're shutting down shipping in the Red Seas. U.S. intelligence reports, comes out and says, listen, shipping through the Red Sea is down 90% since October 7th. I just put that out. I think it's kind of an interesting map that shows so the taller the buildings, it's kind of like a graph, show how much where the population centers are in the Middle East. So you can see, you can kind of see down here with Iraq, Baghdad, Damascus, and these things are not that far apart. So here's the intelligence report from our department. Government says, listen, shipping down 90%. They have to go around the Cape of Good Hope. That adds 11,000 miles and $1 million of fuel costs to every ship. And what's it cost Hezbollah? I mean, the relative cost to the damage that they're causing is pretty amazing. There was this, this was in the Tehran Times a couple months ago, rallies, murals at Tehran's Palestinian Square. But when you read those murals, which are in Hebrew, because they want to send a message to Israel, they say, So we have 100,000 displaced people in the north, these posters. Are you ready for 2 million displaced people? So a lot of you know Amir, he lives in the Galilee. Hezbollah wants to get him to move. Because they just fire rockets in there. You can't live with that. Whole villages destroyed. So here's Amos Hochstein doing his shuttle diplomacy. This is a map. It sort of shows you the border here, and then the crosshatch is all the communities that have been evacuated. It's actually deeper than that into Israel. And we have friends that live in Nahariya. I mean, you sit on the deck of their house and look to the north, and you can see Lebanon border up there like 5 miles away. What are they going to do? How do they do this? Here's an interview with Sarit Zahavi, the founder of Alma. Now, she has a little bit of a thick accent, but you should be able to understand her, talking with, I think, the TBN interview. And I felt like this is the guy I've interviewed who's one of her researchers.
That May was actually the worst month since this war started, and this trend continues into June. The majority of the attacks came from Lebanon. Hezbollah claimed responsibility for the majority of the attacks, and about half of them put civilians' infrastructures at risk.
These are attacks in Israel.
With regard to the type of munition, you can see a raise or an increase in the amount of UAVs comparing to previous months. UAVs meaning drones. These are UAVs that can carry up to 40 kilograms of explosives. And another thing that is important to bear in mind, we are at the beginning of the summer here in Israel. This means that Iron Dome is not intercepting rockets that are falling in open area. But open area in the north, like you see outside of the window, it's forested area.
Yeah.
So every hit in open area at these days causes a fire. The situation that you see on the map with the white pins, which is 43 ghost towns in northern Israel that are evacuated since the beginning of the war. This is 60,000 Israelis that cannot go back to their homes because it's too dangerous. And also the northern region, which is not evacuated,
is also in danger.
Is also in danger, is also affected. I live 9 kilometers from the border. I can say that I feel in the past few weeks that we see more alerts in areas which are not evacuated. This is war. Let's not be mistaken. This is war in northern Israel that started by Hezbollah in October 8. The first attack that started the northern front was carried out from a school. Hezbollah said very clearly, we are opening another front against Israel to stretch the IDF to two fronts.
I have a question. I saw here a picture of the Golden Dome. Yes, this one.
This is in Beirut.
So why does Hezbollah care
Every
about Jerusalem?
Hezbollah military operative that was killed in this war, the branding under his name when they publish that he was killed, was killed on his way to Jerusalem.
Really?
This is what this campaign is all about. It's about destroying the state of Israel.
Listen, she's very intelligent. She's dedicating her life to this. By the way, if you want to support Alma, you can go to israel-alma.org. They can always use the support. They're excellent researchers. They will talk to people like us that want people to be informed, but they're busy as all get out because they're researching it. They've mapped everything out. They were the ones who discovered that the tunnels look identical to North Korean tunnels in North Korea. So who's helping them? North Korea. Where was Putin this week? North Korea. Is there a relationship between Russia and Iran? You better believe it. It's Russia, Iran, China, North Korea against Israel. They're bringing in countries in Africa. Go to Ezekiel. I'm not saying this is Ezekiel 38 and 39, but there's a lot of stuff. I was talking to Craig at lunch. You got this big meeting at the UN in September, the Pact for the Future. We need to figure out a way to control the globe at the UN in September. I'm just telling you, I could go on and on and on. Look at this from the Jerusalem Post this morning. Nasrallah can take out the power grid with one phone call. So what's this say? We're getting a preview of what EMP attacks could look like. In the United States, if Russia decides to attack us and take out our power grid, Israel may be experiencing this week. And what they said in the article, Jerusalem Post, after 3 days, you can't live there. No power. I got it this morning. I get a notice from our electricity provider, American Electric Power. Your power's out. And so I texted Pam, the cell tower will work. The internet was down too. I got a message, your internet's down. If I was home preparing this, I would have been freaking out. And it's okay to freak out sometimes, as long as it's righteous. But, you know, we have a backup generator. We've always tried to do that. But, you know, we were able to do that. The Lord bless us to be able to do that. But I'm telling you, this is crazy. So I want to play one more clip of Caroline. I'll have a few more comments, and then I'm going to let you go because this could go on and on and on.
And in the meantime, what is Hezbollah doing? So there's this report. I just want to show you this video here for a second. There's a report that was on Channel 14 in Israel and some other news sources that you have over 10,000, tens of thousands, I'm not remembering, foreign fighters, militiamen from Pakistan, terrorists from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, and from Iraq that are entering Syria in civilian clothes and then moving across the border between Syria, it's not really a border, between Syria and Lebanon to join Hezbollah forces ahead of the war with Israel. So they have essentially an endless supply of manpower, not only the people in Lebanon, the Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon, the tens of thousands of Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon, but they have an endless supply of cannon fodder that they can and are importing from the east, from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, and from Iraq, all of Iran's proxies in Western Asia, effectively, that are coming in to join Hezbollah in the jihad against the Jews, in their march on Jerusalem.
And later, I won't play the clip, but in it, she says, listen, I'm supposed to leave the country for a while, vacation, it's summer, the kids get out of school this week. So she's going to take, you know, she's from Chicago originally. She comes home. Her mom still lives up there. But she said, I'm leaving. Well, let me play it because I think when Caroline Glick says this, people should listen. So I think it's in this clip. So listen to this.
And then he goes on and says about Sinwar. And I think that this really shows
Talk
the
about
headspace
Tom
of the
Friedman.
administration. He talks about how Israel has to take Sinwar's, has to accept Sinwar's conditions for a deal, which is that he claims that we get all of the hostages. Of course, we only get 33 under the terms of the deal, but whatever. That he's right. We get all of the hostages back, which is not on the table, has never been on the table, and in exchange, we completely capitulate in Gaza. We leave lock, stock, and barrel. And we let Hamas go back to ruling. Sinwar can come out of the tunnel, wherever it is he is, and take to the microphones and run a victory parade, and we're not going to do anything against him. And this is how he argues it. And I just have to read it and put up the text so that you don't have to see me reading the whole time. But it says here.
She doesn't like Tom
If
Friedman
Israel
in the New York
can end
Times.
the war in Gaza, it can lead to a U.S.-mediated deal with Hezbollah to quiet the northern border, which has been terrible for civilians on both sides. It could enable Israelis and Lebanese along their country's border to return home while enabling the Israeli army to recover and restock from a draining fight. It could halt the erosion in both Israel's economy and its global moral standing and let the country do something it should have done on October 8th. That is, pause, rethink, strategize, and not do exactly what Iran and Hamas wanted it to do, i.e. charge ahead just as America did after September 11, 2001, and sink into an endless war without any plan or partner for the morning after, and then hold elections in Israel as Ehud Barak, Thomas Friedman's best friend, asked them to do, or demands. And so then he goes on. Yes, I can hear the criticism from the war hawks right now. Friedman, you would let Hamas's leader Yahya Sinwar come out of his tunnel and declare victory? Yes, I would. In fact, I wish I could be at the news conference in Gaza when he does, so I could ask the first question. Mr. Sinwar, his imaginary question to an imaginary Sinwar, right? You claim that this is the great victory for Hamas, a total Israeli withdrawal and a stable ceasefire. I just want to know what existed on October 6th between you and Israel before your surprise attack. Oh, let me answer that. A total Israeli withdrawal from Gaza and a stable ceasefire. If you don't mind, I'd like to stick around for a few days to watch you explain to Gazans how you started an 8-month war, causing the destruction of roughly 70% of Gaza's housing stock and leaving, by your count, some 37,000 Gazans dead, many of them women and children, so you could get Gaza back to exactly where it was on October 6th in a ceasefire with Israel and no Israeli troops here. Another Hamas victory like this in Gaza will be permanently unlivable.
Here's the deal, though. Thomas Friedman is a foolish person that he thinks, oh, I'm going to go interview Sinwar and ask this question. No, Tom, you're Jewish, you're dead or hostage. What? Hey, can I say moron? Yeah, I can say moron. What a moron. My apologies to all morons. And so Caroline, later in this talk, I don't think I have it here. I follow her, by the way, JNS. Follow her at jns.org, carolineglick.com. She's very vocal. A lot of people in Israel don't like her. She's a bomb thrower. Well, you kind of need that right now. She seems pretty level-headed. There's a very famous clip of her at a Jerusalem Post conference about 10 years ago. I actually took it. Some knucklehead from the European Union said, well, you Jews just need to learn how to live with this. And as he's saying this, I actually did a mashup video of it where sort of the Top Gun theme, you know, hostile target sighted, acquired, radar lock, and she puts down her glass of water and fires, you know, and just destroys the guy right there at the conference. It was wonderful. But she was saying today, she says, look, I'm leaving. I'm freaking out about what is going to happen and what I'm coming back to. And she lives in the area technically called the West Bank. I have friends that live there. They say, we can't, look, there's nothing between me and the mosque over there. There's not a fence or anything. We used to have these people come into our home to clean and that type of thing. They're never coming back as long as I'm alive because we cannot be trusted. And so what's the solution? Well, Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken, Barack Obama, give them a state. That'll work. And we know that something like this is coming, I think. And I think it's going to be something, it's not going to be something that's going to be a big fancy, oh, we have peace. No, they're going to shove it down Israel's throat. You do this or we'll let you go. You'll be on your own. And the word coming out, it's not just Hezbollah. It's Syria, it's Iraq, it's Iran, and some of the publications on the Iranian side that has all this up today is it's not 150,000 rockets, it's not 250,000 rockets and drones, it's over 1 million. So go get her in focus from the other day because she talks about the fact now Russia's and Iran are exchanging drones. And Russia is probably giving missile guidance technology to Iran. I'm telling you, I don't think I've ever, I mean, I know God's got this, okay, but I live in kind of a real world. It seems to be an impossible situation to me. Just thinking about it rationally. Because I know there's limitations on the number of people that they have. And they've been fighting in Gaza. They're tired. They're rotating them out. I don't know what the answer is. Let me see here. Okay, so this is the coastal plain is red, West Bank, Judea, Samaria is green. That's the high ground. This has long been the plan of the United States government to give these people the strategic important parts of Israel. Why? Let me be blunt. Dr. Gil White, I think he's right. Interviewed him a week and a half ago. He said, I want to kill the Jews. It's all part of the plan of eugenics that they've had since World War II and before. And it's the US government pushing it. I wish I could say that he's wrong. So Russia and everything, this is kind of melting down. Like this is the front page of the New York Times yesterday, what Ukraine has lost. So I have friends there. Every time I talk about Putin and Ukraine, I get hate mail like you wouldn't believe. Oh, Putin's a great guy. He's a great Christian. Really? Yeah, look at the great Christian did to villages in Ukraine. By the way, I think this is in the Washington Post this morning, and I've had Ukrainian evangelical pastor friends who've been telling me this for months. Here's the article. Russians target churches in occupied areas. So you'll hear the right, the MAGA right, like Candace Owens, oh, Russia, Zelensky is shutting down Russian churches, a Russian denomination, because they're spies. You understand? Ukraine is at war. And I'm telling you, the technology is changing. I'm seeing videos of guys being chased down by drones in the field. They're all over Twitter and Telegram. Saw one today. I don't know if it was a Russian or Ukrainian guy. But he's running. He turns around and he like prays, and the drone keeps coming. He jumps into a ditch and he's blown to smithereens. Right there on video. And this is the technology. This is AI and all this stuff that's coming. You understand there's this convergence of all of this stuff that I'll admit it's scary. My wife and I have this discussion. I'm glad I'm an old guy, you know, so statistically, I don't know how long I'll be here. My father died at 68. My mother lived into her 90s. So I don't know which one I take after, to be honest with you. So here, like this is Kiev's robot wars. This is changing the face of war. And so when you read in Ezekiel about these people coming against Israel, they come up like a cloud. Is this what Ezekiel saw? I more and more think that that's what he saw. And disruption everywhere. Like France wanted to do snap elections, and now Macron is fighting for his political life. And the people, everybody said, the elite said, oh, she'll never come. Now everybody's saying she sounds kind of reasonable. She's against all of this unrestricted immigration. So they're going to have elections this week, and the polling does not look very good for Macron. And this is from the New York Times. Migration in France, as in the U.S., has centrists leaning to the right. It's happening here too. I don't know. I'm sort of giving up on prognostication. And I'm a nonprofit organization, you know, in more ways than one. And, but, so remember this. And so how does this final beast empire, is it revived Roman Empire in Europe? I'm not so sure. Maybe it is. Putin, I agree with him. He says Europe is weak. But then on the other hand, yeah, Europe is weak, but I have to be afraid of them because they're going to invade my country. It doesn't work both ways, Vlad. Come on. It's a little bit inconsistent. If Tucker Carlson was a good interviewer, he would have asked him that question. Just like he would have asked that Mother Isaac some hard questions too, which he did. It was just kind of a fluff piece. So remember this Economist cover years ago? Macron walking on water, Europe's savior. It's not going so well for him. So I kind of came up with this. He went to the World Economic Forum. He said, France is back in 2018.
France is back.
And so this is my view of Macron now. He's starting to sink. I worked really hard on that one. I don't think I've ever seen a world like this. I shared this a little bit at the beginning of first hour, just because it popped into my phone. And let me see if I can. So it says, the Telegraph this morning, published at 5 a.m. Pacific Daily Time. Richard Overy, Sunday Telegraph. Imagine for a moment that the Iranian government announces it has developed a nuclear bomb and threatens to use it on board. Oh, by the way, what's the title of the article? Why it's too late to stop World War III. So, well, I'll make this guy the guest prophecy updater this week. I try to give that to somebody who seems to be getting it. Probably doesn't understand Bible prophecy. So it talks about Iran. What are you going to do? The Third World War begins with an exchange of nuclear fire, and the rest, as they say, is history, or the end of history. Or picture this, Chinese frustration over the status of Taiwan prompts a buildup of invasion forces. The United States is preoccupied with its own domestic political crisis. Gee, I wonder how that could happen. Japan anxiously watches the exchange of harsh words between China and Taiwan, wondering whether to intervene. The United Nations condemns China, and China repudiates the censure and orders invasion. Confident with a quick victory, it will prevent others from intervening, as Hitler hoped when he invaded Poland in 1939. The United States now activates contingency plans. Now let's consider a totally different kind of global conflict, the growing division between the democratic West and the arc of authoritarian states across Eurasia has entered a dangerous new chapter. I'm not this bad. You know, I have kind of a dark view of things sometimes, but this is the reality of the world that we live in. So what are you going to do about it? Well, as Christians, we can draw closer to the Lord. Pray, get in the Word, warn people about what's coming. Don't know exactly how it's going to play out. There's a number of ways that it could go, maybe 10 different ways, and 9.9 of them were not so good. I mean, the economy, debt. The Saudis went away from the are starting to move away from the petrodollar. I think that might be a little bit overhyped. But they joined a consortium of countries to start central bank digital currencies, which fit into the control system we see in the end times. So listen, be careful, be wise. God has you. God hasn't abandoned you. One of my elders that used to be our elder at our church said this. I thought it was very wise. Hard to hear, but he said this. It's biblical. Don't fear the devil. All he can do is kill you. But fear him who can destroy both body and soul in hell. That's who you should fear. So turn to God. Turn to Jesus Christ now before it's too late. Look, if you have a couple questions, do we have time for that? Okay, a couple questions if you have something to ask. I don't usually do this. I'm not a fan of Q&A because I did this at a conference once. And somebody asked a really hard question. And you know what I answered? I said, I don't know. And you know what? People came up and said, we're so appreciative that you said, I don't know. I said, I really was honest. I did not know. I probably still don't. So anyway, if you have anything or not, we'll close out with a word of prayer and you can go home and enjoy the beautiful day. Anything? Okay, speak up. Bill Koenig, Eye to Eye. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Bill's one of my closest friends. So I've spent a lot of time with Bill. He's been to my house for Thanksgiving before his wife passed away a couple of years ago. He's remarried now, though. I haven't met the new one yet. But I trust his judgment. And so his book is Eye to Eye, Facing the Consequences of Dividing Israel. Every time we do something to divide Israel, withdraw from Israel, make it tough for Israel, things happen in the United States. So I don't like what's going on. I think it does not bode well for our country, for our political crisis that we have. And I'm not convinced that if we keep this up, we'll have elections this fall, because we'll be even more under God's judgment than we already are. So I think that could happen. I don't know. Bill's pretty good. Like, we forced them to evacuate Gaza in 2005. 48 hours later, a little thing called Katrina hit New Orleans. Remember that? Actually, in 2011, I was in Tel Aviv coming home at Ben Gurion. My flight was delayed for 4.5 hours. So there's an Orthodox Jewish guy standing next to where I'm sitting. His brother runs Palestinian Media Watch, I found out later. And he goes, we just started talking, and Dave Barry, the humor columnist, came up and he goes, "Hey, did you read Dave Barry's article on his whatever that thing is, where you have to drink that drink to clean yourself out, you know, colonoscopy? As funny as all get out." Okay, you know, if you like that kind of humor. And so I read it, and he hands me his computer, total stranger. I mean, I could have been a thief, or although he probably looked at me and said, "This guy," I was in terrible pain from bad knees at that time. I didn't have my knee replacements done yet. But anyway, so we talked for 4 hours. And during that thing, he says, "Listen, you Christians in America, you need to understand that when you do stuff to Israel, God does stuff to you. And you need to tell people." And he said, when you made us get out of Gaza, the same area proportionally of the United States that we had to evacuate in Gaza, you had to evacuate in Katrina. They're directly connected. You need to go. I said, I have a friend who wrote a book about it, books about it. But he's exactly right. And this is what happened. So Bill's done a good study on that. We've put together some graphics together. I don't know if he uses them or not. There's a weather site. So Bush, 43, goes to the UN. There's a hurricane heading out into the Atlantic. As Bush is at the UN saying Israel needs to give up the West Bank, the hurricane does a 180 and hits Florida. I'm telling you, it's like minute by minute. You can track it on the NOAA weather site. They say in Israel, coincidence is not a kosher word. There's too much of this building up. Hurricanes, insurance events, and that type of thing. So I would expect certainly things to be, we disrupt Israel, we're going to have disruption here. Maybe worse than we've seen so far. That's my opinion. I don't know exactly, but it's coming. If we continue to act like this, our government continues to act like this. It's not us, it's the government. But, you know, we kind of get caught in the fallout. Anything else? Oh, we better go, because my mouth is, I'm out of water in more places than one. You want me to pray? Let's pray. Lord, we're so grateful that you knew down the corridors of time the times that we would live in. and that you blessed us with the blessing of living at this time, but also having the scriptures to kind of help us understand the context of the time in which we live. And Lord, I just pray that we will consider ourselves blessed, but that we will take action in response to that, to live lives as holy people, unashamed of the gospel, and sharing it with those around us. We pray that you'll bless us. Pray to bless all the people who drove here today. Give everyone safe travel. In Jesus' name, amen.